Okay.
On the remote.
It's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Harry is going to, in that case, take the lead. All right. All right. We'll get there in the end. Right. I'll do a quick recap of the session last week.
Lovely. Wes was just seeing if he could. If
Oh,
we
he's,
were on, so have you let anybody in?
Yeah, not sure. Hold a second.
Should jump in.
There we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
Camera on.
Right.
Get rid of that. Get rid of
Maybe
that.
Right, cool.
Okie dokie then. Hello, all at home. So, quick recap from last week. Okay, so we touched on weather and how we can check it, and a few.
You just want to turn your camera and mic off.
Say that again. What was that?
What was the request?
Hang on.
Can you hear me or not?
Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, it's coming through that microphone.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. Wasn't that it? So yeah, we spoke about whether, first of all, how do we find it and get the forecast. There's a number of apps that we can get hold of. Obviously, you've got the good old BBC, XC Weather, which is an app you can download. No, it's not. It's a website. You can just, it's free, and it will give you a day by day. You just type in the area that you're in, and it'll give you a good forecast. As most of these apps, they run on algorithms, and so if you look at them 2 weeks out, they won't be right. But if you look at them 2 or 3 days before, pretty decent. Day before, they should be about there. So they're good to go. Wind Guru is the keen sailor's favourite, a bit more detail, and you can stage it going. So particularly if you're yacht sailing, in terms of kilometres offshore. So there's a different weather system, you know, sort of 10 kilometres offshore than there is here. The Davis WeatherLink app is an app that you can download and link onto, and that records various weather stations around the country or the globe even, and it finds your area, you let it know where you are, you have to set up an account, and we have 2 very good stations here, also the inshore lifeboat and the offshore lifeboat. So you've got an inshore wind situation, and then one perhaps out into the channel, which is a little bit more real, if you like, and what we'll get. So that's very useful. The club system ran off the old lifeboat weather station, which was changed to this Davis WeatherLink. So unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore, and it won't link into website. So you just have to download it separately. And then I put up here the good old nowcast. So rather than looking and worrying about what's going to happen, get down and have a look. What's happening now? You know, what's the weather doing right now? Is it okay? Because quite often forecasts will tell you. So many times we'll have come down here for a.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, sorry. Parcel.
So often we'll turn up for sailing, and because the weather forecast has been rubbish of the week, nobody's turned up and said, "Oh, look, it's not going to be very good the weekend, so I'm not going to bother." But actually, the nowcast, stick your head out the window, have a look. So there we go. Wind direction. We just touched on. There's a little map of where we are. You can see on your screens as at home. So we've got obviously 4 arrows. The prevailing wind, which is generally where it sits, comes from the southwest, which is pretty much directly from the pier head into us. But generally, if we've got the weather system and the Gulf Stream is set up where it should be, that's where generally we'll get most of our wind from. Obviously, as low pressures and high pressures go around and move up the countryside, that then changes directions. So we have an onshore breeze coming over from Kent as a southerly, so it's coming from the south, which is good sailing for us because it's a bit more steady generally. The offshore breeze, as we had this weekend just gone, looked beautiful and calm out there until we got out past the second row of buoys, and then it was carnage. Trying to stay on a hurricane doing God knows how many miles an hour in that sea was hard work. And it was rough as anything. If it had been an onshore breeze, nobody would have ever gone out, but we went, and because it looked calm. So again, with looking at the weather, be very aware of knowing if it's an offshore breeze, it might look lovely and flat, and actually it isn't. It's just because we're shaded by this great big building and all the others along the seafront, and the houses going backwards.
And the land actually slows.
Yeah. Wind over the sea will accelerate, which is why you do it. One of the reasons why you get very different system out at sea. Then we looked at the sea breeze, which is from us is an easterly, funny enough, coming from the sea, this is the fascinating thing, because as the warm air, I'll try and do this very quickly as a recap. As the warm air rises on the land on a lovely sunny day, you'll see these little clouds, these little puffs of cotton wool, just sort of 500 feet off the ground, so, very low, and they start to gather. And you can see, here we go, we've got heat coming up. And then when there's enough of those, what happens is the heat will build, and then it will go out to sea to find the cooler air. And what happens is, as it gets cold, as it cools, that heat will then drop. Hot air rises, cold air falls. So it falls back down to the sea and gets sucked back in by the hot air and comes back in as a sea breeze. So we have this, I call it this engine going along of hot air rising, going out of sea, coming back and coming in. So always you'll find on a really sunny day, early afternoon, perhaps 2 o'clock, something like that, the land's heated enough, it's all shot out, it's landed on the sea and it's come back in. And from what might look like, assuming no sailing today, it's a mill pond, we've all been there. Suddenly you can see it, here it comes. You can see the ripples on the water. From literally sitting there with the sail flapping, we did it at the Sandhopper National Assembly last year. So I had the anchor out actually, because I was going to be drifting with the tide. There was nothing. And we sat there, thought, that'll be that. And then, hello, here it comes. And second race, it was we were both sitting on the side of the boat. Great. So, and it's a wonderful breeze because it's steady, it's solid, and it's fantastic. It's the best sailing breeze you can get. So during the summer, sea breeze. So we then did. Is it on another slide, or we just?
Yeah, there is another slide.
Doing this one.
Down.
Oh, we did like that. Go out then. How do we go back?
But doesn't want to do that all, does it?
There we go. So I'll just talk about wind strength and the Beaufort scale. It's on the slides. You'll be able to get it. So just a quick recap here. Force 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You'd have heard of those on the radio. Probably quite familiar. While you're learning, 1, 2, 3, lovely breeze. 2 to 3, lovely breeze to start learning to sail in. 4 is getting a little bit more challenging. That's 11 to 16 knots. And so I remember that one. So last week, remember that one, and you can sort of go inside and work out. So if it's around 20 knots, well, I'm probably into a force 5. Then it's getting a bit leery. 6 is definitely getting a bit strong. I don't know what we had out this weekend. Yeah.
Really 40 Shepherd.
So it's really 40 knots over the Sheppey. So and we've gone out sailing. Idiots.
Yeah, no, enjoy that.
Off here, it would have been. I think the pier was reading something like 25. Early 20s. Really, isn't it? Because again, it's Sunday. Yeah, and it was lovely out there. I must admit. No, it was a bad day, was it? Even on a hurricane sitting on the trapeze, it was. Actually, I'm not enjoying this. It's cold as well. So there we go. It's wind strength to have a look at the Beaufort scale and try and gauge where you think it might be. And again, it's often once you've got the white horses start to appear on the waves, so the white crest, that's about a force 4 thereabouts. It's a good rule of thumb. So you learn to spot and be able to gauge. This is what we've got now. You can try and guess what wind strength we got. It's a good thing to do. And then we did a little bit of tides, how it comes in, rule of 12ths, as it comes in and goes out over a 12-hour period. So 12 hours basically. And 6 high tide is at 6 hours, and how it comes in slowly to start and builds up, gets faster and faster, then starts to back off towards high tide, and it does its turn, and then it goes out quite quickly. Just first down not so bad, second down, third down are the quickest, and then it will build. And an outgoing tide here is always much faster than an incoming tide. So once it's hit, it will go, and it will go quite quick. It's that just sucker for there's a larger volume of water pulling it out than there is trying to squeeze it up and push it in, I guess, logically, as we come up the river. And of course, we're on an ideal area here because we've got a big sandbank that we sit on, which is about sort of between 10 and 15 feet deep, roughly, pretty much even across the whole bank. And it will be fairly steady tidal strength. It will be stronger as you get towards the deep water. Imagine the deep channel, there's more drag, more volume of water moving, the tide will be stronger. And obviously in the shallows, there's less volume of water, so it will be a lot less strong.
Is there an app? What would be the best source for information?
Information on the tide. I use this app here. It's called World Tides, and it gives you. Don't you see that? It gives you the peaks, the tide. So we're just dropped off the other side of high water, so instantly you can see the peaks are high water, and we're coming into probably the second hour of the tide. Currently here it's 3.5 meters deep. We've got a half moon symbol here, so we're halfway through. That means we're on the neap tide situation, where the moon moving in and out will create this is what moves the tide, waxing the way of the moon. And when there's a full moon or a new moon, that's when it has its strongest pull and push. So the higher tides and the low tides are always at a spring, and then in the neap you won't come in as far, but it also won't go out as far. So, and it's less strong as well, so it hasn't got the strength in it. And again, this you can sort of scroll forwards and you can look ahead a few days and see, well, high water on Friday is at 1816 here, so it's quite useful. You have to pay, it's about £3 a year, but it's pretty good actually. So that was tides. Also direction of travel, it's going to come from out there, but it does come in at an angle here. So you'll get, the further east you go, the quicker you'll get wet. The further west you go, it'll take longer. Hence, Lee doesn't get much water, anywhere near as much water as we get here. So it does come in at this angle. And you've got, I mean, I think this Sunday actually, obviously because it's a neat tide, it just didn't want to come in. No. It's really slow. I've rarely seen it, and can't work out why, because it was a northerly breeze which does push the water down. So normally with a northerly, the tide will come in faster, but it crawled in, it hit the bottom slipway and just stopped. And we were standing there, we were supposed to be sailing, couldn't get the boats in, and it was a good hour and a half, wasn't it? Yeah. Before yeah, it just wouldn't go in. Ridiculous. And then of course there's other days like where we had in the storms, or just after the storms, where we had that big tide. You probably all saw the seafront got wet. 6.9 metre here, huge, but mainly because it was a spring tide and they shut the Thames barrier because of all the rain and the flooding possibilities in London. And they thought, well, let's not have a big spring tide, so they shut the barrier. Of course it's got to go somewhere, so it comes up on our seafront. So that's
actually around the corner. So it comes from the North Sea down.
It's down, yeah.
So when it goes out, if you're not caught on that, not only going that way,
you'll go up to it. You can visit Factor, it's quite nice there. Yeah, so it will come all the way down the North Sea, which is why when you cross the channel, if you're going on a Belgium or Dutch trip, your tide goes that way and it comes that way, and it's just straight up and straight down, which is quite handy in navigating because you just do a straight line and you get sloshed up that way, then you get sloshed back that way, and then it brings you back to about there. It works quite nicely for a sailing yacht doing about 5 or 6 knots. But anyway, that's I think a quick recap of where we went. Anybody wants any further info, please shout afterwards. I'm happy to go through anything.
Thank you very
not
much.
to take up the entire evening again.
Yes. All right. So we did have a little chat about racing as well. So on this current set of slides is a little bit of an updated diagram compared to the whiteboard, which the course is changing slightly for this year, but essentially, yeah, on the slide pack for this year, for this one is some flags and stuff as well.
We'll do that.
We
in more
won't
detail
label that.
on the 24th.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to do a little bit of basic navigation, voyage and the ILA system. So there's a little video to go with this. So we will crack on with that. It's only about 5 minutes or so long. It gives you the key buoys in the channels and the ones we should look out for. They are international. And of course, we'll get some adverts as well. So we'll skip over that. There you go. Yeah.
Plays out.
No, doesn't play sound. Why is it not playing sound? Why is it not playing sound, Harry?
Don't know.
It's your new laptop.
So 2 days old, that's the problem. So it should be putting output into the TV, right?
Yeah. Do you want to have a quick play? See if you can get that.
I don't know what to do. Let's have a think. Stop sharing for 2 seconds, team.
Weird, isn't it?
That is really weird.
Definitely played sound earlier when I played on the video.
Yeah. Okay. So you run the video.
Yeah. Screen share. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can do that.
Yeah. That is just running nothing, is it? So if I do that.
Wonders of modern technology.
Yeah, I've no idea why it's not playing any music. That was just
Unless you-
bizarre.
yeah.
I was actually playing YouTube earlier through a TV.
If you are struggling to lose weight, seek to escape
Okay.
then you have to see this now.
Yeah, my sound quality is terrible.
Okay. Let me do this quick. See if
Yeah, we're just trying to sort out the video, so we'll be with you in a second. It's not working at all.
no, I'll get absolutely no sound.
Yeah, if you want to go and get another beer, use the toilet, take a few minutes, sort out our technology.
There's nothing coming out. Why is nothing coming out?
Does it sound if you don't have the HDMI?
Yeah, I've done that.
I'm still not doing it.
Yeah, so my next recourse would be to turn it on and off again.
Scott, do you want me to try and play it from my laptop? Do a share screen?
Association of Lighthouse Authorities buoyage system is used in most parts of the world, including Australia. It is known as the Iowa System A. There are 5 types of marks you need to learn for safe coastal navigation. All these marks can be buoys, piles, or beacons. The first are lateral marks, which indicate the port and starboard sides of channels. The second are cardinal marks, which indicate the safe side to pass any danger, such as rocks or a bend in the channel. The third are special marks, which indicate a special area which will be mentioned on the chart. The fourth are isolated danger marks, which indicate a dangerous submerged object. And the fifth are safe water marks, which indicate that the water all round is navigable. Now let us look at these 5 types of marks. There are 2 lateral marks, one red, the other green. They can be buoys, piles, or lights. The safe side to pass a lateral mark is determined by your direction of travel to or from the sea. Heading upstream or away from the sea is called the direction of voyage. When coming into port, the red marks are always on the port side, that is the left-hand side of your vessel. Port lateral marks are always coloured red, and if they have a top, the shape is a can. When coming into port, the green marks are always on the starboard, that is the right-hand side. Starboard marks are always coloured green, and if they have a top, the shape is a cone. The reason the tops are a different shape is so you can tell whether you're looking at a port or a starboard mark if poor light makes it impossible to tell the colour. Remember, port marks are red with can tops, and starboard marks are green with cone-shaped tops. If lit at night, port marks have red flashing lights, and starboard marks have green flashing lights. There are 4 cardinal marks: north, east, south, and west. They're used in conjunction with your compass. Each cardinal mark indicates where the safest water is found so that you can pass by the mark safely. All 4 cardinal marks comprise 2 black cones mounted on a black and yellow buoy or pile. North cardinal marks indicate that the safe water is north of the mark. The 2 black cones point up. The black band is above the yellow band. East cardinal marks indicate that the safe water is east of the mark. The 2 black cones point outward. There are 2 black bands, one above and one below the yellow band. As you might expect, the south mark is opposite to the north one. The safe water is south of the mark. The 2 black cones point down. The yellow band is above the black one. And the west cardinal mark indicates safe water to the west side of the mark. The 2 cones point inward. There is 1 black band between 2 yellow ones. If lit at night, the north marker exhibits a continuous flashing light. Similar to the numbers on a clock face, the east marker flashes in groups of 3 flashes. The south marker in groups of 6 flashes, followed by 1 long flash, and the west in groups of 9 flashes. Special marks are always yellow. They indicate special features or areas which will be shown on the chart. These could be a spoil ground, a channel for deep draft boats, a recreational area, underwater pipes, or a mooring area buoy, as in this case. If lit at night, the special mark light will also be yellow. A mark with 2 separated black spheres above horizontal red and black bands is an isolated danger mark. It is on or moored above an isolated danger, such as a submerged object which is surrounded by navigable water. The mark indicates that you should not pass too closely. If lit at night, isolated danger marks have a white light showing a group of 2 flashes. Safe water marks can be spherical, pillar, or spar-shaped buoys. They're always red and white in vertical stripes. They indicate there is safe navigable water all around the mark. The top mark, if fitted, is a red sphere. If lit at night, a single long flashing white light, or an isophase flashing light when the duration of light and darkness are equal, or an occulting flashing white light when the duration of light is longer than the darkness, is exhibited.
There's extra that.
Your work can feel much smoother with Monday.com
Everyone get
WordPress.
that?
Yes.
Right, don't worry about that too much. Yeah, we'll notice with a number of these videos. They're
we done on that one.
we're done on that video.
Okay.
That's the slideshow.
There we go.
Boys are important. That's all we'll say in this particular scenario. But yeah, all of the boys are marked. Howard touched on the point last week about the colours of the marks and the buoys, and the fact that on this side of the river, along the beach, the marks at the end of the groins are all green with the little green hats on top of them. On the other side of the river, they would be red with the buckets on the top. I suppose red buckets. We do have a lot of the marks around here, especially the danger area, which, if you're not aware, the ship across the other side of the river, the entrance to the mouth of the Medway, which is the Montgomery, is going to lose its masts at some point in June or so this year. So if you like your windows in your house and you live anywhere near here, might board them up for a little while, because they are planning to cut them down, and they are spending lots of money on a danger team to do that. Or if you want to go and see them and you've never seen them before, go over there and have a look, because you'll never see them again after they come off. Okay, look at it, really.
Obviously, it's got long term west around it.
Yep.
There is a cable run between them.
Yep.
I have known some boats manage to get through the cable or over the cable and then not get out, because they're trying to get out near the buoy. Get direct to the buoy.
Ah,
So I go to
yeah.
Yeah,
If
just stay well away.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
The thing slowly slipping into the channel as well.
Yeah, not a good thing to be there. So yeah, and I think I mentioned in the video as well, all the marks are always marked as they go up. I don't know how I mentioned it last week. As you go up into the waterways, so into land, with your marks being on the left and right, associated in that way. So you follow them.
You will actually get a bit of confusion possibly
With Medway.
halfway through. You've got Medway that's leaving at one pool, Thames pool going the other way. So you could find yourself where you've got.
Yeah. The Medway markers are smaller, aren't they? The Thames ones.
The wrong way round.
Yeah. Well, I thought they were. Yeah.
But that's.
So no, it's fine. So we have got a slide in a minute that does show a little bit of the markers that we've got kicking around from a chart perspective anyway. So yeah, important to know your marks, important to have them in your mind as to what to do with them once you get to them, because going the wrong side of your cardinal marks might not be such a good idea. And then going the wrong side of the shipping lanes, not such a big issue with our boats, but going the wrong side of a small mark, that again might be an issue, especially if we're going into the lee. If you're going into the lee, going into the very small channel that takes you, if you're going into it, certainly if you're on a cruiser, their markers are there for a purpose. They mark the very, very tiny little channel that's in the middle. I went there in my cruiser last year, and there really isn't a lot of water. So really, really take notice of that marked channel.
You're always going to hit them.
Yeah, you absolutely got to sit on top of them, more or less. And be very, very close, and especially if you go into Lee itself and go anywhere near I think they'll call it a marina. I'm not sure why it's called a marina, but it is called a marina at the end. Yeah, it is. They've got more. Well, it's got some grass. Yeah, either. So that's what gives you an idea that. Yeah.
Quick tip to cardinals.
Yeah.
If you can't remember, north upwards, south downwards. If you get confused between east and west, depending on how old you are, think of May West.
Or an Easter egg. Easter egg. Shape of an Easter egg.
Yeah, or I used to remember, the west kind, it points to your waist. Which points in. So, and the arrows will always point to the black.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The arrows will always point to the black, so you can never remember. Oh, what's the? Is it yellow on top? Because you'll see the thing. You can't always necessarily spot the shape on the top, but you might see the colouring, and you go, "Oh, wait a minute, black on top. Was that south or was that north?" So
The black's where the points are.
points to the yeah. So if black's on the top, then it's like to be a north. So
yeah.
And so, Cat, if you've got a cardinal and it's the north one,
the safe walk is north of that.
Yeah. It's saying stay north of me.
Yeah.
That's what it's saying to you. And
Give it a berth as well.
Yeah, don't be right. Don't be right then.
Tap it as you go.
Yeah, don't give it a tickle on the way past. That's not such a good
they're
idea.
rather large and made of steel.
Yeah, a lot of the time it's sunk in the ground. So yeah, okay. That covers off fairly for Mark. Remember what else? The next slide, right? Okay, yeah. So this is just a screen grab of Navionics that I use on my phone. So if you've got a simple app, costs about 35-40 quid a year, pretty useful. What's that? Well, yeah, well, Navionics does a little bit more.
38 quid already.
Yeah, a little bit more. It's pretty good app. You shouldn't absolutely rely on it. You should be able to read a chart and be able to do your chart work as well. But this sort of gives you an idea of where we are currently and the shipping channel and all of the marks that are out there directly from here. And as you rightly said, Chris, there are a set of charts of buoys that take you into the Medway, and then there's the main shipping channel that takes you into the Thames. And as there is some little bit of confusion as you would get out past opposite Pigs Bay, opposite Shoebury. So gives you an idea of how many marks there are. One of the key things about crossing a shipping lane is to, what should you do when you're crossing a shipping lane? Absolutely. No dawdling, no fishing, no putting your anchor over the side, no waiting around. And if you are crossing a shipping lane and there is a ship kicking around, always aim at the back of it. Don't aim at the front of it, because you'll never beat it. Well, yeah, try and miss it. But if there's a few ships, as there can be, rows coming out of this place nowadays, try and aim at the back of them, because as it moves, you'll go then back along the back of it and go with it, depending on where the wind shadow is, of course, if you're sailing.
Maybe. If you're going to hit, well, it's about converging. So if two things are converging, the angle that you're looking at each other will always stay the same.
Yeah.
So if your angle's changing, you go behind it. Then you want that to want the angle to be tight as you travel.
Does make some sense. I think you probably need to drink more beer. But it's his birthday. Just remember this every time. Every time we drink his beer, it's his birthday. So, okay. We're going to watch another video. Notice a lot of the videos actually. Well, the last one was Australian. The next one is, I think, Australian. They seem to have quite a lot of good videos. Obviously, most of this is international, but they do make reference to being localized as well in some of it. This is probably a little bit longer than absolutely ideally we would have liked, but it does make the point around ships and how to deal with ships. And it's really important around here of how to deal with ships and what to consider about them and the effect they have on water and stuff as well. The other thing I put on the right-hand side here is your cockpit companion. They do a series of these little booklets. They flip over, they're waterproof, they're very useful. But if you've not got one, you are in a cruiser, or if you are going across shipping lanes, or if you are new to this, I would probably get a few of these, the series of them, because they're really easy to refer to. So they give you the ship's blastings of their horns, what they mean, your navigation marks, your all of the key things you'll need to know, essentially a quick grab of your booklet, so you can know what it means and then refer to it. They're on Amazon, they're about £5, and they are very, very useful.
Quick question, how far out is the shipping lane?
Mile and quarter.
just the other side of the Mulberry Harbour is your gauge.
Yeah.
Okay. And to the right of the Mulberry Harbour, you can see the green conical buoy, which is called the West Shoebury buoy. That obviously is the right-hand channel mark coming up. So deep water is the other side of that.
Yeah, you go from about 5 meters at maximum depth here to about 18 meters. Literally goes like that. And if you set a race course here and they use that as the race mark, which they did last year for the final fling for the Sandhoppers, that made the race very slow going around that mark because we were going against the tide. It was just like hitting a brick wall. You went up to it and you went like that, and you just went, and then you have to go past it quite a long way to then not hit it as you went around it. So yeah, all of it a challenge. But yeah, so the video is a little bit long, but that gives you an idea, and it's give you an idea about how to deal with ships. So this, yeah, we've got sound, that's good. Straight. And then we'll skip some ads.
Coastal waters are a haven for recreational boating activities. The increasing number of recreational vessels operating in the area surrounding the approaches to ports can create navigational difficulties and hazards for commercial shipping. Similarly, the operation of large ships near smaller vessels can present hazards and consequences not immediately apparent to small boat operators. For your own safety, stay clear of big ships at all times. At certain times of the year, for example, snapper season, recreational vessels engaged in fishing tend to congregate in the approaches to port channels, anchorages, and transit lanes. In addition to powered vessels, yachts participating in events near shipping channels or transiting coastal entrances in offshore races also cause difficulty for the safe navigation of large commercial vessels from time to time. Where big ships approach a coastline or port, it is likely the waterway will be shared by many other types of vessel. The key to avoiding conflict with big ships is being aware of the risks, the rules, and exercising common sense. In this program, we'll look at reasons you may not be able to anticipate the path of a big ship, why a big ship may not see a small boat, why a big ship is so dangerous to a small boat even when not in close proximity, and some simple rules to apply to avoid conflict between big ships and small boats. For your own safety, stay clear of big ships at all times. Commercial vessels operate 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Large vessels must maintain speed to steer, and in most cases they must stay in the channel. It's the only place deep enough for them to operate. Large vessels in a channel cannot alter course or easily slow down, and they cannot stop without losing the ability to steer. Large vessels approaching bridges, bends in the channel, and leaving and approaching their wharf must be lined up and committed to their approach well ahead. It is dangerous and difficult for them to change course. At the entrance or exit to a channel or port facilities, large vessels will often be tracking fixed lead lights. Despite the absence of channel markers, big ships may not be able to alter course. The bridge of a big ship can be hundreds of meters from the bow, obscuring the captain's view directly ahead. In fact, a ship's blind spot can extend up to 1 kilometer forward of its bow. The speed of a ship or tug can be deceptive. Large vessels may travel at speeds in excess of 20 knots. It generally takes 1 to 2 kilometers for a large ship to stop, even with its engines going full astern. On some waterways, the channel extends bank to bank, so expect vessel traffic on any portion of the waterway. Large ships can disrupt the water for long distances from their path. Bow waves are large surface waves caused by the bow of a ship pushing through the water. A bow wave can swamp small craft hundreds of meters away from the ship. Prop or wheel wash can result in severe water turbulence hundreds of meters behind a large vessel. This effect can also swamp or capsize a small boat. Small boats can be unexpectedly drawn toward big ships when passing close amidships due to the operation of bow and stern thrusters in port areas or anchorages, and at higher speeds due to hydrodynamic effects. In rivers and port zones, a ship or tug's powerful engines can also cause a smaller vessel to be pulled toward the larger vessel when passing alongside. All of these effects can swamp or capsize a small boat. Sailing near large vessels can be hazardous due to the reduced and unpredictable wind in the lee of the large vessel. Yacht skippers and windsurfers should know that a large vessel can steal their wind, resulting in the loss of maneuverability, headway, and the capacity to avoid conflict. Five short blasts indicate the master of the ship is unsure of your intentions or doubts that you are taking enough action to avoid collision. Move clear of vessels sounding this signal.
What are you doing?
Ships, tugboats and port control use VHF radio to communicate. Emergency communication is conducted on VHF channel 16 and alternate channel 67. If you are unsure of your situation or another vessel's intentions, contact them to assure separation. Channels are marked with port and starboard lateral marks. Port lateral marks are red with a cylinder or square on the top. They mark the left side of the channel when inbound to a port. At night, port lateral marks are lit with a flashing red light. Starboard lateral marks are green or black with a cone or triangle at the top. They mark the right side of the channel when inbound to a port. At night, starboard lateral marks are lit with a flashing green light. Transit lanes or transit-only lanes run parallel to and up to several hundred metres either side of commercial shipping channels and fairways. They are marked with a yellow special mark and lit with a yellow light at night. Small boat operators must not anchor, moor, drift or engage in fishing activities within a channel or transit-only zone. All vessels are required to operate according to the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea. These regulations are also enshrined in state legislation. Harbour Master's directions for the ports of Melbourne and Geelong dictate that vessels under 50 metres in length must give way to vessels over 50 metres. Harbour Master's directions are available from your local port authority. Use safe anchorages. It is illegal and dangerous to tie up to navigation aids like buoys and channel marks and to anchor in channels. Cross channels only when safe to do so. Do not impede the passage of a vessel which can safely navigate only within a shipping channel. Yachts must stay clear of large vessels at all times, even when racing. Large vessels have right of way as they may be restricted in their ability to manoeuvre or constrained by their draft. The master of any vessel is responsible for maintaining a lookout at all times. Crew and guests on your boat should be used to maintain a lookout, particularly for large vessels. If you can't see the windows on the bridge of a big ship, its crew may not be able to see you. Understand whistle signals. 5 short blasts on the whistle indicates that the vessel is unsure of your intentions or doubts you are taking enough action to avoid collision. Take obvious and immediate action to move clear of vessels sounding this signal. Don't boat, jet ski, sail or windsurf in and around large vessels. Jumping wakes, riding close alongside or cutting under the bow of a large vessel could cause a boat or skier to be sucked through the vessel's large propellers and bow or stern thrusters. Avoid cargo loading berths and parked or moored vessels. Stay clear of loading areas, turning areas or terminals. In some areas, recreational vessels are prohibited from operating in these areas. Watch for large vessels lighting at night. Don't rely on trying to hear a vessel approaching. If you see both side lights, red and green, you're dead ahead and in the path of danger. When operating at night or in times of restricted visibility, ensure that your boat displays appropriate navigation lights. The radars of large vessels are limited in their ability to detect small craft and do not detect wooden or fiberglass vessels. Know the area you are operating in and local rules which may apply. Be aware of the international regulations for preventing collisions at sea. Remember, never anchor, moor, drift or engage in fishing activities within a channel or transit-only zone. Stay clear. Remember, large vessels cannot alter course or stop quickly. Small craft may be hard to see from the bridge of a large vessel. Small craft should not always assume they have been seen. In shallow waters, large vessels may not be able to deviate from their course, and small craft should be prepared to avoid these large vessels and make it clear that they are avoiding them. Stay clear. For more information, contact your local Port Authority or Transport Safety Victoria.
Or not. Maybe not. Maybe not Victoria for around here. No, well, she's just trying to make a point, I suppose. She asked me to
Stay clear.
stay clear.
Great. Right.
Yeah.
Grammarly does more than catch errors.
So just a quick question.
Like she said, the red and the green flash. In Australia, they all flash together.
Has it got?
Here, in Europe, they don't. They have, each buoy has its own trawling sign, if you like. So it will be, and you can see that. Watching out on the sea, difficult to see now, but
There we are.
for example, a green one might have a green light that flashes once and then has two long pauses, and the next one along might do 6 quick flashes and then a 2-second pause, and the next one along will be different. So that when you look at your chart, you can identify those. What's that? Now that's flashing 6 and 1 long. So you look at your chart, you know roughly where you are, 6 and 1 long. Oh, that's the West Shoebury. Right, I know exactly where we are now. It helps you pinpoint where you're at.
And that's a 1.5 out.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be able to see them flashing, but you're watching the green and the
So the green at the moment.
Yeah, there's the West Shoebury which is flashing green now.
Oh yeah.
And they'll all be different. So, but
Turn the lights off in here.
yeah, in Australia they all go on at once. Great.
Lots more.
Yeah, they have a little more and they are all close. So
It's a runway, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. But it is quite different over here.
Yeah. So the other thing to remember around here is dredgers. We have obviously lots of dredgers kicking around, and they do odd things and they go in odd directions, and you can never make head nor tail of what they're actually doing. So just stay out of the way of them.
Yeah, that's fishing boats.
No, Coventry.
Coventry, yeah.
Scott, just a question
yeah,
from Nick.
the big dredgers, yeah, they do tend to go in odd directions and then just stop, obviously, because they're going to dredgery.
To be fair, any motorboat.
Yeah, that's the way that is.
I know they're supposed to be very
No. Yeah, absolutely. So, yes.
Scott, I think Nick's got a question. Nick King, I think.
I think it just got covered actually by saying that, isn't it from a sailboat
got a little
perspective?
video. This is all about. This is more aimed at cruisers and coming up alongside a marina. It's done by a guy called Tom Cunliffe, who's he's been around for a while. He's been around for a while. He has a rather nice boat of his own, and he's going to show us in his own unique style of how to get onto a marina. And it's just it's just a nice little video to watch. Might give us some ideas of how to deal with tide movement and those sorts of things. Tank. Oh, don't go on a tank.
This is American.
We're on the Hamble River at Hamble Point Marina, one of MDL's finest. And behind me here, you can see we've got a post. And looking at that post, you can see that it's half tide. You don't need a tide table to tell you. You can see that by looking at it. We're going to be talking about manoeuvring a yacht in a marina in a tide. And for me, the tide is my friend. It makes things easier. It doesn't make things harder. But there are 1 or 2 basic rules that you have to follow and 1 or 2 understandings that are needed. For example, if you call up the marina and it gives you a berth that's going to be down tide, you're going to be going in with the tide behind you into a finger berth and the tide's running at 2 knots. What you have to do is say to the marina operator, unless, of course, you really know how to handle your boat and you're totally confident, You say to the marina operator, look, I'm awfully sorry, I can't get into that berth. Can you give me another one that's going in up tide? Because that's the way you want to maneuver the boat. And that's what you have to do. You have to be ready and willing to reject a berth if you don't like the look of it, or at worst, to hang around for slack water, and then you can get into it okay. Because the wonderful thing about maneuvering in the tide is this, that so long as your bow is pointing into the tide, you've got water flowing across your rudder. And therefore you can always steer the boat. And you can steer the boat moving as slowly as you like over the bottom. Because if the tide's doing 2 knots past a berth and you approach it into the tide, you're doing 2 knots. And you're still doing 2 knots when you come alongside. So you've got perfect control of the boat. For this exercise, we've been loaned an Arcona 430. And it's a cracking boat. Me and my pal John here took her out for a couple of days. We got back yesterday. So I've got some idea now of how the boat handles. It's always a bit of a thing, isn't it, getting into a boat that you don't know well, or perhaps you just bought a boat, you're not quite confident with it, but you've got to get a grip and find out how to do it. So I have some idea what's going to happen here. It's got a good engine. We're going to go up to MDL's Port Hamble Marina, where there's a lovely fuel pontoon, and it's out on the river. And we're going to use that just to demonstrate coming alongside in a tide. And then we're going to come back here and we're going to get it into a tricky little finger with the tide running. Right, we've got a situation here. Tide is running. I know it's running. But if I didn't know it was running, if I wasn't sure, if I was around the turn of the tide, I'm going to show you a surefire way of telling which way the tidal stream is moving in a river. And it's dead easy. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the boat square across the river and motor very slowly from one side towards the other. And we'll see straight away by watching objects behind each other on the shore which way the tide is going. It's absolutely obvious. Now, as we go across the river, I'm aiming at the moment straight towards those berths over there, and I can see by watching what's happening behind them. The background behind the berths in the foreground is moving out from left to right, and that's showing us quite clearly that the tide is carrying us from left to right. It's called a transit, and it's a great demonstration. If I want to come alongside a berth on the outside here, I have to be coming in up tide with my bow into the stream. Right, well, we're going to come alongside the fuel berth now. Tide's running that way. My bow is into the tide, so I've got water flowing across the rudder. The tide is not very strong. I've got to say, we were hoping for a ripper of a tide today, and it has not been supplied because we've got high pressure and we've got a northerly wind, both of which militate against a good tide in the Hamble River. Never mind, we'll be able to do what we've got to do. First thing I do is have a look round, making sure I'm not going to come with grief and cause problems for anybody. And then I'm going to look at the fuel berth. It's just over here. I'm eyeballing it, and I'm seeing there's a big blue sign in the middle of it. And I can see that behind it, there's various boats and things. So as I approach the berth, I'm going to make sure that that sign stays exactly in transit with the boats behind it. And that means I'll be moving straight in onto that berth. I won't be going forward of it or behind it. If there was a load of boats there and I had to hit a gap, that's how I would do it. And remember that it's me, where I am, that's looking at that berth, that's looking at that sign, not the man on the bow. He's seeing something different because the boat's 43 feet long. So my mate John's in the middle of the boat, and at the moment, he and the sign and everything else are lining up nicely. So in we go. You can see now that the boat is sliding on the tide, and we're actually dropping back a little bit, a tiny bit. So I'm going to put a little bit of power on just to encourage her to move. Now you'll notice I'm heading in towards the berth. When I get nearly in, I'm going to bring her up to line her up with the tidal stream. Here I go, because that way she's going to slow down. At this point, my blue sign has slipped a bit, but look, it's coming back into line now as I come in. I'm just going very slow astern to take a bit of way off. And I'm going to straighten her up so she comes alongside the berth absolutely in line with the tide. The rudder's still working, and John's going to hop off in a minute. He's not going to jump. There's no need for that. He's going to just step off. And look, the boat is hardly moving forward at all. It's just so easy for him. He puts his rope on there. The boat lines against it. He picks up the stern line, and that's us. I'm still steering the boat, you'll notice, while John's putting the lines on. I've got a lot of port rudder on at the moment because the bow's gone in a bit. And that's it. He's got his lines on. So now I can put the helm amidships, stop my engine, and that's it. We're here. I'm shaping up for a berth in MDL's Hamble Point Marina. As I see it, what I've got to do is slide in between a catamaran and what looks like a big Halberg Rassie with a stern to me. And that's where I'm going. And my berth is immediately inside there. It'll be on my port side. So I'm going in up tide. And that's the critical thing. I've got to be going up tide. If it was down tide, I'd just tell him I was going to wait for an hour, because that's all it'll take. Go somewhere else for an hour and then pop in easy. But as it is, he's given us an up tide berth, which means that as I'm going in, I've got water flowing over my rudder the whole time. Even when I'm alongside the dock, I'm still moving through the water. So I've got complete control. Much better than doing it in slack water, really, isn't it? The only thing is there are one or two things to watch out for. As we turn in, we will be going across the tide. And when we're across the tide will carry us down, and it'll carry us towards the boats that are on our starboard side. And we've got to make jolly sure that we don't get too close to them. And if we get very close, we've got to remember that the boat pivots about the keel, so that when I turn the wheel that way, the bow goes that way, but the stern goes that way. And if I'm within 5 or 6 feet of the boat down there, I'm going to whack him with the stern. When I whack him with the stern, I lose all control, the bow falls off, and it's tears. So we don't let that happen. We stay well off the boats on the down tide side. John's ready with the midships line. And as soon as we're stationary, he's going to get that line on. And then I'm going to go ahead on it slowly. That will make sure that the boat's under control and everything's all right. You must be sure that your crew know exactly what they've got to do when you come in. Sometimes you see a boat coming in and people are flamming about with the ropes. They don't know what's happening. Crew's got to know exactly what they've got to do. The ropes have got to be ready for them. The fender's over. And then your job is so much easier at the helm. So now, as we move along, the transits are opening on the catamaran. That means we are currently going past the catamaran, and we're going past everything else because the piles that mark the end of the berths are also moving from left to right. Now, if I start to steer in a bit, one of those piles will become stationary because the tide is carrying me on. So I'm going to make a good turn now because I don't want to be carried right past the berth. I'm not going to hit the catamaran because the tide's taking me past it. I'm taking it as slow as I dare, but with great care. Here we are. I'm watching this very closely, but I think I'm clear of him now. So now I'm sliding sideways down between the boats. The big post on my port side is moving the way I want it to move. And the post ahead of me is moving very slowly. So as I come into the berth, I'm watching the transits all the way. I've got to be careful to make sure I don't go into the motorboat on my port side, but because of the tide, you see, I'm well clear of him. I'm going to take a bit of way off. I'm just going to put a slower stern as we go in. Now I'm heading straight up into the tide because I'm clear of the motorboat. I'm taking way off. John stepped ashore. I'm taking off the last of my way. That's it. I'm still steering the boat. Look, she's moving nicely along. We're happy now, so we can take way off so we don't have anything too dramatic happen. And we'll just slowly lean on that spring. John's got the stern, so all is well. We're safe. Thank you, John. Nice one. I'm steering the boat now so that as I go slow ahead into the tide, my rudder is taking the stern into the dock and she's lying there sweetly while John runs out the bow line. This was a relatively easy berth to get into because we came in out of the river and just slid in here and came in starboard side too. Nice and easy. If they'd given us a port side two berth, like the one over there where that motorboat is, we wouldn't have been able to do that when you think about it, because we'd have been coming in from the river and we've been going past the berth instead of into the berth. So what you do then, and this takes a little bit of confidence and it takes a little bit of time to do it, but it is so worth it. Don't try and scream around the corner. Go a little way up the avenue, turn round, and then approach the berth just as we did starboard side two, but approach it port side two. If you try and come in round the corner, it'll end in tears. So go past it and come in that way. All fast. We go out of gear. Helm goes amidships. And it's time for a cup of tea.
He's a real character. Yeah. And there's loads of Tom's videos as well. He does all sorts. Yeah, and he's only been around for a little while.
Yeah.
Even one of our members has starred in a video with him. David. I don't like your laptop, Harry. Quite a bit, yeah. Play games with it. There you go. So you do loads of stuff with Tom.
I think that the menu bar basically stops you seeing what's on and up what's happening.
Oh, is it?
So he said that using tide to your advantage is a real benefit actually.
Really
Well, it'll be much easier if there was no tide. No, it's actually not. As he says, even when you're barely moving, because you've got that flow of your run, you've got steerage all the time.
Now, can we just move this toolbar out
Real
of the way?
small,
There we go.
it's real slow,
There you go.
steady, actually make a difference.
Yeah. So one of the things, I suppose, the important thing about that is, if you're considering bringing a sandhopper or your cruiser up onto our slip line, is to consider where the tide is moving to and how you're going to interact with the slipway itself, and always laying off the boat with the tide, or the front of the boat into the tide rather than pushing it into the slipway. In these examples, all the boats are tied up sideways using springs, and spring essentially is just this rope here that goes to the side of the boat and in. It just allows. It's on my drawing.
Bigger boats.
Yeah.
If you've got a 3 foot,
Yeah, that is true.
you probably haven't got.
No, that is true. It's also not my small cruiser. That is very true. So they can go from the front to back. But yes, they give you that then allows for tidal movement, and it allows the boat to go back and forth with tidal movement when you're in marinas or on quays. Or the other thing to consider on a quay is when, if it's not a floating marina, is when you've got tidal movement, you don't want your boat hung up on the side of the quay, so allow your enough rope and slack within the rope to allow for that tidal movement. There's lots of photos of, especially powerboats, sort of hanging around, literally on the side of the quay. And there's a few yachts as well who've done that in the past.
Don't put it really tight.
Yeah.
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 People tend to tie these boats up rock solid.
Right. Even if
No
you're
good.
floating,
Let it float off.
onto,
Move about.
Let it be a bit natural. Let it be a bit natural. And always consider the tide. And in his other videos, I did watch a few of those today. Some of them aren't always all suitable. For various reasons. He always mentions going into the tide for all berths, and he mentioned it again in that one. If the tide wasn't running with him, then he'd wait for the tide to turn and go into the berth. So go into it, so making the most of the rudder and the water going over the rudder, so he's got control at all times. If not, if you're going into a marina and they give you a berth that you don't like, just ask them for another one. See if they've got another alternative. He mentions that as well. Don't always have that choice. Don't always have that choice. Depending on the marina, they won't always be tidal either. Tidal effect you won't have. So Chatham Marina, I don't think particularly is tidal affected. Burnham Yacht Harbour is not particularly tidal affected in that way. But Essex Marina is definitely tidal affected. And somewhat, yeah. Yeah.
good luck over the shore.
Yeah, and good luck having a choice in certain marinas, that's for sure. So that's just a little bit about marinas and quays. We won't necessarily always do lots of those. The slides are there to be read, and that was it. That's all I'll put on there. So, any other questions? There is a question actually on. It's online. I think somebody's trying to. Why we're not getting the voices through on the. We've had sound. Nick wants to ask a question. I know, Nick. I'm going to try and get why I've not got your sound, your voice. I don't know.
Nick's on mute.
Nick's on mute. Nick, did
Right.
you ask a question?
The question got
And if I
answered.
no, you are come off mute, and I still can't hear you. We are definitely having sound problems.
Is this like it'll play sound through?
It plays sound through whatever it feels like it wants to play sound. Nick, we're just going to sort of sound out, mate, and we'll come back to you.
That's all right.
So
It's the input, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's there's the speaker. We changed the speaker background. That's what it was. Yeah. Try again.
Yeah, hello. Hello.
Nick, are you there?
I am.
Right.
No.
You on this one? Hold on a sec.
Yeah, I'll try and type it out. I think it's us.
No, we're definitely having loads of sound problems.
Because you're not starting.
Oh, can you hear myself?
Yeah.
Nick, can you hear us?
Hello, I can hear you. Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
See if I turn my volume up.
You turn your volume up. Strange how it works initially, isn't it? Yeah, I think we've got sound.
Go on, Nick. Ask the question. Yeah, sorry about that.
I think I was answered, he says.
That was answered. Okay. Oh, okay.
All right.
All the sounds definitely working. Okay. I've gone on mute. Oh, still causing problems.
Is it working now?
I can hear you, Nick, but I don't think they can.
It's all right. So the question simple. I think it got answered anyway. So I know we were talking about like the large ships under power, but isn't it still stand the case that a smaller power boat under power has to be a big power boat?
Turn your.
Yes.
I don't think we can't hear him, can't we?
No.
Say that again, Nick. I couldn't hear because of the echo.
Right, we got rid of the echo.
Sorry, the question was, and I think it got answered, was we're talking obviously about the container ships being under power and sailboats giving way. The reverse of that, isn't it a case of a small power boat or a jet ski or something under power should give right of way to the sailboats?
Correct. Yeah, they should. You're absolutely right.
You're right. The word being should.
Yeah.
Absolutely use that with a pinch of salt. And the golden rule is don't hit anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep clear at all costs. And
we all have an opinion of people who like it.
yeah.
If you think they give a shit about the rules.
Yeah. Well, if you think that the people that buy a jet ski have ever read the rules, then
of course.
You're probably on the wrong track. So there we go. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions from the room? No. In that case, we shall bring it to a close. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll be here. Oh, sorry, Chris. Oh. I'll have a beer, please, Chris. No. I'll have a fake one, please.
Thanks, everyone.
Good.